Welcome back to the Father's Mercy here in Auburn, Kentucky, back on Holy Smokes. And in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 23, there is a scene where our Lord criticizes the Pharisees. He says, to do as they say, but not as they do, because they perform these deeds to be seen. All they care about is widening their phylacteries and lengthening their tassels. But what in the world is a phylactery, and what's the deal with these tassels? Well, first off, a Jewish phylactery is a small leather box, and within this leather box was a scroll that had God's laws written on it. And when the Jewish men would go to pray, once in the morning and once in the evening, they would tie one of these leather boxes, one to their forearm, and then they would tie another one to their forehead. And this practice stems from the book of Deuteronomy. For in the book of Deuteronomy, when God is telling the Israelites to always have his laws before them, he says to tie these laws to their forearms as a symbol and to bind them to their foreheads. And the Jews took this quite literally. Instead of just being a reminder of God's laws, they actually took them and bound them to their forehead and to their forearm when they would go and they would pray. And so that's what a Jewish phylactery is. Now in the book of Numbers, there is a section where God is telling the Israelite people to be separate from the other people of the world, not just in their identity, but also in their clothing. And he tells them to have 4 tassels put on the garments, on the corners of the men's garments, to set them aside in clothing as well as in identity. Now, this plays an important part in another section of the gospel because there's a scene where a woman who has hemorrhages has the faith to come into the crowd around our Lord and profess that if she can just touch the tassel of his garment, she will be healed. And this is the tassel that she is referring to, is those tassels that were worn by the Jewish men on the 4 corners of their garments, which come from the book of Deuteronomy. And our Lord, when he is criticizing the Pharisees for caring about widening their phylacteries and lengthening their tassels, he's saying that all they're doing is using God's laws for show. So those phylacteries and those tassels, they all care about making them seen and how ornate they are, versus what they're supposed to lead them to, which is actually the practice of God's laws. And so the Pharisees' hearts are far from him, although they are wearing the phylacteries and the tassels. So hopefully this gives us an idea of kind of the Jewish culture, the Israelite history from the sacred scriptures. So that way we understand what our Lord is referring to in those gospel passages. Dominus Vobiscum, benedicat vos omnipotens Deus, Pater et Filius et Spiritus Sanctus. Amen.